You've discovered Challenger.
2, 1, and liftoff.
Challenger was lost in a horrific explosion on a cold day in January 1986.
More than 3 decades after the Challenger disaster, technology finally unveiled what sunlight and radar could not. An underwater secret that challenges everything we thought we knew about that tragic day.
A lot of stainless steel fittings down here. This is really different. Whatever this is, it's really big. Definitely an aircraft. I think we need to talk to NASA.
Imagine scanning the ocean floor only to find a shape so intact, so deliberate. It defies the chaos of an explosion and forces us to rethink the final moments of 7 astronauts. What if the official story was missing a vital piece, hidden beneath layers of silt and silence? This is a dive not just into ocean depths, but into a haunting mystery where survival, loss, and intrigue intersect in the cold Atlantic waters. The unseen sonar contact. In early March of 1986, weeks after the Challenger disaster, the USS Preserver, a rescue and salvage ship, was sweeping the ocean floor with side-scan sonar. The search area was vast, almost 500 square miles of shifting sand and currents off the coast of Cape Canaveral. Most of the sonar readings were disappointingly empty or cluttered with common underwater debris, old oil drums, rocks, or discarded machinery. Sonar operators were exhausted, their eyes burning, trained to spot anything out of place. But they had grown accustomed to disappointment. Then, unexpectedly, a solid and distinct sonar contact appeared on the waterfall display, a scrolling image formed by sound waves reflecting off the seafloor. Unlike the usual jagged and scattered marks caused by shattered debris fields, this return was sharp, rectangular, and uncomfortably precise. Nature rarely creates right angles or boxy shapes on an open sand plain. The sonar operator's heart skipped. This wasn't random wreckage. It was a single, large object resting heavily in the silt. The ship circled back to run the sonar over the spot again from a different angle, and the image confirmed their initial shock. It was roughly 30 feet long, partially buried, and unmistakably artificial. It wasn't the wing, the tail, or cargo bay doors the crew had expected to find, but something with a very specific size and shape, one that only matched the crew compartment of the shuttle. The room on the ship fell silent as the implications sank in. Eyes darted around, with an uneasy mixture of disbelief and dread filling the atmosphere. Everyone knew the crew compartment was designed to be the shuttle's strongest section, but no one had fully believed it could have survived such a violent breakup. The popular understanding was that the vehicle was vaporized in the explosion. Yet this sonar signature offered a silent but stark contradiction. There was something profoundly disturbing about what lay beneath the waves. If this compartment was indeed intact, the official story of a painless, instantaneous tragedy might need to be rewritten. It suggested that the crew might still been alive inside when the fuselage hit the water. That terrifying possibility shifted the mood from technical precision to somber reality and sparked a haunting question. What else was lying in wait just beneath the surface? The sonar continued to ping steadily off the object, producing a rhythmic pulse oddly reminiscent of a heartbeat submerged in darkness. It was an eerie and unexplainable echo in the otherwise silent deep. Nearby, faint secondary signals appeared, small and distant, but enough to cause unease among the crew. Rumors started to swirl about a second object, something that shouldn't have been there, and oddities with communications interference suggested forces at play deeper and more complicated than a simple crash site. Meanwhile, tensions simmered on deck as divers prepared to confront the unknown, bracing themselves for what was shaping up to be a grim descent. The ocean had swallowed the shuttle, but it was refusing to give up its secrets without a fight. Every moment underwater promised to challenge not just their skills, but the very narratives the world had accepted for so long. As the USS Preserver readied for a dive into the dark Atlantic, all eyes were fixed on the sonar's disturbing signal. The sea was not only a grave, but a vault. And for the divers about to enter this shadowed world, the truth waiting in the silt would change history forever. The eerie certainty of what that sonar contact implied is inseparable from the brutal conditions those divers faced as they prepared to confront the unknown in the next phase of their mission. The harsh reality of recovery. The ocean is an alien environment, indifferent and unforgiving. At roughly 100 feet down, the divers faced a world where sunlight faded quickly into a bruising twilight, and then pitch blackness. Visibility was near zero, the water thick with fine silt that could turn the entire sight into a blinding cloud with a single wrong kick. Currents tugged relentlessly at their gear, fighting to drag them from the safety of their guidelines. Every movement had to be calculated, controlled, or risk losing sight of the object, and possibly life itself. Their mission was far from a routine salvage dive. They were descending into what felt like a tomb, the gravesite of national heroes. Psychologically, the weight was crushing. These Navy divers were soldiers as much as technicians. They had faced death and destruction before, but the enormity of what lay in front of them, both the physical wreckage and its emotional toll, was unique. The atmosphere on board the USS Preserver grew thick with unspoken dread. The object beneath was no ordinary piece of wreckage. Once their lights finally cut through the silt, divers saw scorched white thermal tiles patched with missing sections revealing the bare aluminum hull. Floating wires curled like tendrils, evoking a strange image of a robotic sea creature rather than a spacecraft. The forward fuselage's recognizable shape brought a hush to those underwater and above, as the reality settled that the cockpit itself had endured the fall. Peering through the thick, reinforced glass windows, divers glimpsed inside the flight deck, and the sight was haunting. Seats remained bolted in place and control panels intact, but most striking was the knowledge that this was the very place the crew had still occupied. The condition of the remains was classified, but it had been enough to shock the seasoned recovery team. The cabin's shape told a brutal story. It had been flattened and deformed by impact, yet it was undeniably human. The divers were tasked with more than recovery. This was a meticulous forensic operation. The cabin was a crime scene and a grave, so every inch required documentation before any attempt at raising it. They recorded details like the position of switches and the state of helmets, knowing these traces might hold answers no one had sought before. Every recovered object became a piece of a grim puzzle that held the crew's final moments. Rumors haunted the operation. Some whispered that the cabin was found far from where physics should have allowed. Currents in the area were strong, but they alone couldn't explain the compartment's unexpected location. Speculation arose that the crew compartment had some limited control during its fall, steering a falling brick through the ocean. Personal effects scattered oddly. Flight checklists drifting near windows, helmets unlocked, spoke of activity in a place where total destruction was assumed. Amid this eerie calm, a new shadow crept into the mission. The presence of Russian sonar contacts. Reports emerged of unidentified submarine-like objects lurking nearby, monitoring the recovery. The divers, tensely aware of this, imagined invisible watchers hiding in the gloom, adding a layer of espionage and paranoia to the dive. The United States Navy responded with scare charges, small explosives designed as warnings, underscoring the real dangers beyond the wreckage. The presence of Cold War tension and secretive surveillance transformed the recovery into a race against more than nature alone. These divers were not only pulling history from the depths, they were protecting secrets valuable enough to spark international conflict. This atmosphere of threat and solemn duty set the stage for revelations that would shake the story of the Challenger to its core. The harrowing reality of recovery gave way to the origins of the disaster itself, conditions and decisions that unleashed the tragedy still etched deep in memory and engineering alike. The cold launch hazard. On the morning of January 28, 1986, Cape Canaveral faced a rare and dangerous weather event. Temperatures had plunged into the 20s, turning the launch pad into what looked like an ice fortress. Icicles hung from the service structures, some nearly a foot long, causing concern among the safety crew. Their worry wasn't just about falling ice damaging the shuttle's delicate thermal tiles. The real threat lay inside the massive solid rocket boosters. Those boosters depended on rubber O-rings to seal joints, preventing dangerous leaks of hot gases. But the frigid cold had turned these seals from flexible rubber into hardened plastic, robbing them of their ability to flex with the immense pressures they faced during launch. Engineers from Morton Thiokol, the booster's manufacturer, were alarmed. The night before the launch, frantic calls were made urging NASA to delay. The message was clear: launching under these conditions was unsafe. NASA was under tremendous pressure. The shuttle program was already behind schedule, and political imperatives weighed heavily. This mission was historic, carrying Krista McAuliffe, the first civilian teacher set to broadcast a lesson from space to millions of school children. The public's anticipation and political expectations left little room for postponement. Managers advised engineers to set aside their concerns and proceed, valuing optics over caution. At liftoff, the shuttle ascended majestically, but within seconds, the disaster began unfolding. A small puff of black smoke emerged at the right booster's aft field joint, an early sign of seal failure. For a brief moment, the fault seemed temporarily plugged by burning aluminum oxide, giving false hope that the flight might continue safely. But that hope was shattered as the shuttle hit an unusually strong wind shear at high altitude. The violent gusts broke the fragile seal, releasing a blowtorch-like flame that burned through the strut, securing the booster to the external tank. This breach triggered the catastrophic breakup of the shuttle. Unlike a conventional explosion, this was an aerodynamic breakup caused by the shuttle flying sideways at twice the speed of sound. The structural failure was brutal and sudden, but not an instantaneous vaporization. Pieces, including the crew compartment, survived the initial disintegration. Theories surrounding this event quickly proliferated. Some suggested the flash, seen on launch footage, was no accident, but a laser strike, perhaps a Soviet attempt at sabotage during the tense Cold War. Others speculated about mysterious devices attached to the tank or internal sabotage by disgruntled employees. Though there is no proof for these claims, they underscore the climate of fear and suspicion that surrounded the mission. Ultimately, the disaster was a tragic consequence of failed seals and neglected warnings. The fuel tank ruptured, mixing liquid hydrogen and oxygen, resulting in rapid combustion and breakup. The crew compartment tore free, flying ballistically upward before plummeting into the ocean nearly 3 minutes later. Such details are crucial for grasping why the underwater discovery wasn't just wreckage, but a poignant symbol of survival against overwhelming odds. These technical and human factors converged to create a disaster whose aftermath was shrouded in silence, but whose secrets waited patiently beneath the waves, ready to be uncovered by those brave enough to look. The tension and mystery beneath the ocean's surface mirrored the complex web of engineering and politics above, setting the stage for revelations that would rewrite the story of the Challenger tragedy. Theories beyond the crash. The Challenger disaster unfolded during the height of the Cold War, a tense period marked by suspicion and the unseen chess game between the United States and the Soviet Union. It wasn't long before wild theories began threading through the tragedy, fueled by fear and the unknown. Some suggested that the explosion was no accident, but the result of sabotage, even implicating laser strikes from space-based weapons or submarine systems aimed at crippling the American space program. While these claims lacked concrete evidence, the political and military climate made them feel plausible to many. Rumors of a mysterious brown box, an electronic device allegedly attached to the shuttle's external tank and sending strange signals, added another layer of intrigue. NASA denied such claims, but speculation thrived in the absence of full transparency. Conspiracy theorists also proposed the idea of internal sabotage by disgruntled employees or hidden manufacturing defects covered up by corporate interests. Each theory, no matter how far-fetched, stemmed from a collective desperation to understand or assign blame beyond technical failure. The presence of Russian intelligence ships just outside the recovery exclusion zone fed the paranoia. These vessels, flush with antennas and equipment, were rumored to be monitoring the salvage operation closely. American naval forces had to allocate resources specifically to track and deter any Soviet attempts to seize classified material. The thought that the Soviets might snatch bits of the shuttle's sophisticated technology heightened the stakes beyond pure engineering tragedy. Amid these fears, the idea that the crew compartment had survived raised unsettling questions. Were the astronauts conscious, struggling, or even able to attempt a rescue after the breakup? Official reports maintained a narrative of instantaneous death, but the evidence hinted at something far more complex. The idea that the crew could have been alive, fighting for survival in the moments after catastrophe, stunned investigators and fueled intense debate. Public speculation only grew with whispers about secret recordings. NASA's audio systems did record voice transcripts up until the moment of breakup, but some claimed there was a secret tape capturing the crew's reactions during their fall. Although NASA firmly denied these allegations, the theory persisted among those who found official accounts incomplete or intentionally obscured. The uncertainty fed a need for a deeper truth beneath the surface. This swirling cloud of theories reflected the era's distrust and the human tendency to seek explanations that fit larger narratives. Whether it was the shadow of the Soviet Union, a clandestine attack, or corporate cover-ups, these suspicions painted the Challenger disaster as more than a tragic accident. They revealed a darker story of political pressure, human error, and secrecy. In hindsight, many experts have emphasized that while the theories are compelling, the root cause was ultimately a failure of engineering and management judgment. The O-ring issue and cold conditions were well-known risks that were ignored or downplayed. Despite months of investigation, some families and commentators remain haunted by the question of what might have been covered up or overlooked in the rush to protect a national program. With the political and technical drama behind the disaster set, the focus turns to the very tangible, haunting artifact discovered at the ocean's bottom, a silent witness to the crew's last moments and the reality they faced as the shuttle fell apart. The discovery of the largely intact crew compartment brought with it truths that would forever haunt the recovery team and challenge the narrative accepted for so long. The cabin's surprising survival. When the divers finally reached the site marked by the eerie sonar signature, they descended into a deep, near impenetrable darkness. The forward fuselage, the crew cabin, rested upright but twisted slightly in the sand, its white thermal tiles scorched and partially missing. Beneath the murky water, wires floated out like tentacles, giving it a haunting, almost living quality. The sight was a stark reminder that this was not just wreckage, but a vessel that had once held 7 lives. Looking inside through the reinforced cockpit windows revealed a scene frozen in time. The seats, controls, and panels were all in place, eerily intact despite the violent forces that tore the shuttle apart. While the condition of the crew remains classified and delicate to discuss, the cabin itself was recognizable as a space where human beings had fought their last moments. The crushing forces of the fall had deformed but not obliterated the crew compartment. This survival of the capsule challenged deeply ingrained beliefs that the crew had been immediately vaporized or crushed beyond recognition. It introduced the somber reality that the breakup was not the absolute end. The cabin had flown a ballistic trajectory for over 2 minutes after the explosion, carrying the astronauts in a descent as harrowing as the launch was hopeful. The divers carefully documented every detail, aware they were handling not just debris, but a crime scene and a tomb. Positions of switches, helmets, and personal items all told pieces of a story the world had never fully seen. Strange finds, like an unlocked helmet or a checklist floating near a window, suggested movement and activity, hinting at moments of awareness and effort during those final seconds. Adding to this harrowing puzzle were reports of Russian sonar contacts shadowing the recovery operation. The divers were acutely aware that they worked under the watchful eyes of potential observers, increasing the pressure and paranoia. The U.S. Navy's deployment of scare charges against unidentified submarines highlighted the precariousness of the mission, not just as a recovery, but as a battle to protect sensitive technology and national security. The psychological impact on the divers was profound. Men who had faced death and chaos chose to remain quiet, their usual humor and camaraderie muted by the weight of their discoveries. They had witnessed the physical evidence that contradicted comforting narratives of instant death, painting instead a picture of bravery and suffering that few could comprehend. As the recovery progressed, the weather turned against the team, the sea growing rougher as if reluctant to relinquish its secret. When the cabin was finally raised, pummeled by waves and heavy wind, the silence on deck was reverent. This was no longer just material salvage. It was a sacred moment of closure and confrontation. The examination of the cockpit's control panels revealed something that would shake the official timeline to its core. Several switches had been flipped post-catastrophe in ways only human hands could have managed. This forensic detail confirmed that the crew was alive, conscious, and struggling to act long after the explosion. Understanding the cabin's survival sheds new light on the tragedy. It transforms the narrative from one of immediate destruction to a story of profound courage against impossible odds. This truth, buried beneath the ocean's silt, challenges us to reconcile heroic human will with the devastating consequences of flawed decisions. The revelations uncovered in the silent depths contrast with the conflicting theories and technical failures, weaving a complex tapestry of tragedy, heroism, and enduring mystery. Signs of life after breakup. One of the most haunting discoveries during the recovery of the Challenger crew compartment was the evidence pointing to the astronauts' survival for several seconds after the shuttle broke apart. Investigators found that multiple personal egress air packs, emergency air supplies worn like scuba tanks on the backs of seats, had been activated. These packs required conscious effort to turn on, meaning that some crew members were awake and capable of movement during the fall. This shattered the long-held belief that the crew was instantly incapacitated or slain the moment the shuttle disintegrated. Perhaps most striking was the case of pilot Mike Smith's air pack. It had been turned on, but its location behind his seat meant he could not have activated it himself while strapped in. This suggested that fellow astronauts sitting behind him, either Ellison Onizuka or Judith Resnick, had reached forward to help turn on his air supply. This act of support and quick thinking added a deeply human and tragic dimension to the disaster. The crew was responding, attempting to survive, and taking care of each other in the darkest moments. Further forensic analysis of the cockpit controls revealed that switches had been flipped after the breakup, some trying to restore power or functionality. The pilot had even moved electrical switches on his right-hand panel in a last effort to regain control or power. This evidence firmly established that the crew was not only conscious, but actively trying to manage the crisis for the entire 2 minutes and 45 seconds of the cabin's ballistic trajectory toward the ocean. There was speculation about secret audio recordings from inside the cockpit, with rumors claiming that the crew's voices were captured during the fall. NASA officially denied any continuation of recordings after the breakup, stating that power loss cut off all audio. Yet, conspiracy theories have persisted, bolstered by the evidence of activated air packs and switched controls that imply awareness and attempts at survival far beyond previously accepted timelines. Understanding what the crew experienced during those final moments is chilling. If the cabin held its pressure, they would have been alert, witnessing the sky change from black to blue, feeling the wind roar louder as they plummeted, enduring the terrifying forces of spin and acceleration. Those minutes of consciousness expose a nightmare scenario of struggle and despair, vastly different from the accepted story of immediate death. The presence of active life support systems also challenges assumptions about the crew's mental state. They were not frozen in panic, but were focused and deliberate. This stark reality highlights the extraordinary courage and professionalism of the astronauts, trying to save themselves and each other amid an unfolding disaster. Tragically, despite their efforts, the impact with the ocean at roughly 200 miles per hour subjected them to over 200 times the force of gravity. Forces instantly fatal, despite the cabin's structural integrity. The idea that they fought to the very end transforms the Challenger tragedy from a sudden catastrophe to a story of human resilience and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. This new perspective fueled heated discussions about NASA's initial narrative, which often emphasized instant, painless death as a way to shield families and the public from the grim reality. The uncovered evidence, however, confirmed a harsher truth that the crew suffered and fought throughout the fall, a truth both heartbreaking and heroic. The revelations of the crew's final moments remind us that behind every disaster are people, their bravery often hidden beneath layers of silence and official reports. But deep in the ocean's shadows, those signs of life remain etched in history. The faint, persistent signals found near the crew compartment hinted that the ocean held more than wreckage. It held secrets and watchers beyond the divers' immediate sight. Underwater enigma and shadow contacts. While the divers worked painstakingly to recover the Challenger's remains, an unseen presence lurked beneath the surface. Reports surfaced of unidentified sonar contacts shadowing U.S. Navy ships during the recovery mission, sparking fears of covert surveillance by foreign submarines, most likely Soviet, given the tense geopolitical context. The idea of a tiny, stealthy submersible watching divers in a watery grave added a layer of espionage thriller to an already grim task. These shadow contacts created a palpable tension among the recovery crew. The divers, aware they might be observed or even targeted, carried out their work with heightened caution, knowing that this was not just a recovery operation, but a silent contest of intelligence and power. The U.S. Navy responded by deploying scare charges, small underwater explosives intended to warn off or deter any unidentified submersibles. This covert underwater cat-and-mouse game unfolded alongside the grim search for human remains and critical evidence. The shuttle wreckage had a great value regarding strategy. The shuttle was not only a way to transport civilians to space, but it also contained very secret military technology. Heat-resistant tiles, aerospace-grade computers, and advanced engines were some of the technologies that the opponent countries would desperately want to get hold of, as they were rich in intelligence. If the Soviets had managed to successfully recover these parts, they could have at least gotten during the Cold War the arms race and space programs that were secretly developing weapons. Divers, who were often looking over their shoulders, had to operate among the lines, recovering human remains and evidence while being, to some extent, intruded upon. It was hard for them to cope with this psychological strain, and at the same time, work in the difficult physical conditions of the rescue made this operation very demanding. These were the very same men who had previously faced dangers but still found this operation very disturbing, not because of what they were trying to recover, but because of the possibility of other people watching. To even imply that the international espionage and the risk of sabotage had a part in the recovery brings a chilling aspect to the tragedy's aftermath. It was not merely a tale of loss, but a tale of a silent battle fought under the sea and hidden from the public eye. The ocean turned into a place of war, where politics merged with tragedy. And so, as the ocean held its secrets close, the world watched, waiting for the truth to surface beyond the sonar echoes and shadowy threats. The legacy beneath the waves. The discovery of the Challenger crew compartment on the ocean floor marked a turning point in deep-sea salvage and forensic investigation. It wasn't just about recovering physical debris, it was about uncovering truths that had remained buried in silence and salt water. The technology deployed during this mission, from side-scan sonar to remotely operated vehicles, set new standards for underwater searches. These advancements would later prove crucial in finding other lost vessels, including the Titanic and Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. The Challenger recovery was a grim but pivotal chapter in ocean exploration history. Beyond technology, the recovery changed how we view tragedy and human endurance. The evidence that the astronauts fought to survive, and the somber reality that they ultimately could not, reshaped public perception. The disaster was no longer just a catastrophic failure, but a story of courage, determination, and heartbreak under unimaginable pressure. This nuanced understanding deepened respect for the crew and heightened awareness of the stakes involved in space exploration. Mysterious and controversial events still surround the Challenger disaster, even after the advancements and revelations made in the investigation. Theories of various kinds continue to exist, from espionage to secret recordings, showing how traumatic incidents cannot be easily explained. However, the explorers' factual story uncovered under the sea speaks louder than the gossip around the issue. One of the pieces of human evidence, such as the cold and hard actions taken after the breakup, comes up with a challenge to the narratives that comfort us and keeps the more honest and truthful remembrance alive. That NASA's choice to put the Challenger's recovered pieces in an old missile silo under Cape Canaveral was a very practical and also a very symbolic move. This tomb is a memorial under protection. It is a place for respect and remembrance, and not for concealment. At times, debris is found on the shores along the coast of Florida. faint reminders that the tragedy is still a part of the present. These bits and pieces contain strong narratives, allowing the legacy and the lessons to continue to be told. The mission, on a larger scale, highlighted the very fine line between human aspiration and the merciless forces of nature and physics. Space travel is an adventurous challenge, but at the same time, it is a confrontation with our fragility. The Challenger disaster has left a very loud warning. The technology can fail. The decision can have the most fatal consequences. And the heroes sometimes have to deal with the most unimaginable odds. It calls for a humble approach in exploring the unknown. The divers, engineers, and investigators involved in the recovery were changed forever. Their experience illuminated not only technical truths, but also moral and emotional dimensions of disaster. Many carried the weight of what they had seen for the rest of their lives. Their stories, the quiet strength amid despair, add depth to the historical record beyond scientific analysis. The Challenger disaster teaches us about resilience amid failure and the price of progress. It reveals the human stories behind cold facts and shattered machines. If this look beneath the surface moved you, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's mysteries and untold stories.